How are you developers? I trust you're doing fine. Today we'll be building our final app, that is the Quotes app. The Quotes app is an app that displays random inspirational quotes that are fetched from an API, and users can view the quotes, tweet it, or share it on Facebook. If that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. If you're following this course, you're aware there's a GitHub repository where we usually push the code beforehand, so you can use the git pull command to fetch the latest codes. And if you are new, I'll provide the GitHub link to that repository in the video description. So you look at the video description and get that link, and you can pull the codes that you're about to use them. If you put the changes, you'll see there's this new folder here. It's called Codes app, and inside that folder there's a HTML file, a JavaScript file, a style sheet file, and a markdown file. So the markdown file is this one here. It explains what the code does and which API that you have used. You're using TypeFit API. That is the API that we'll use to get the codes. Then if you look at this HTML file, it contains a div, the class container that wraps the whole codes. Then there's this div of ID code text where we'll display our code. This other div will display the author. Then there are these buttons. There are three buttons. This first button is for when someone clicks this new quote button, a new quote should be displayed every time they click this button. There's this button for Twitter. So if someone clicks this, they should post it to Twitter. Then there's this other button for Facebook. So when someone clicks this button, it should take them to Facebook where they can post that tweet. So that is the HTML. The CSS is also just small. So there's nothing unique about this CSS, just the basic CSS that you always do every day. So just did the colors, the background color, the border, the padding, the margin, just the basic stuff. So there's nothing new there. You can look at it, and the JavaScript file is just empty, and this is the file that will actually write in this code. So that much ado, let's dive in. Before I write the code, this is how the app looks like. It's just that way. So here is where the code will be displayed. Currently there's no code, so it's just blank. Then here is where the author will be displayed. Then there's this new quote button. When someone clicks this button, it should display a new quote. When someone clicks this tweet button, it should tweet it. You can see it's opening new tabs every time I click this tweet button, because it should open Twitter in a new page. When someone clicks this Facebook button, it should open Facebook in a new page. That's why it's opening these new tabs here. So that is how the app looks like. So let us go and write our algorithm. By now I believe you know that before you write any code, you first have to write the steps that will guide you to write that code, and those steps are called an algorithm. So I'll create a new file. I'll call that file algo.md. So it's a markdown file, and inside there I'll write my algorithm. I already had it, so I'll just paste the algorithm and I'll take you through the algorithm. So the first step is to fetch the actual data. So we'll fetch the data from our API. This is our API here. We'll fetch our data from here, and we'll look at how the data is. That will be our first step. Then we'll call that function that fetches that data. Then since you have a lot of quotes, we'll create a function to generate a random quote from the available quotes. You just want any random quote. Then after getting that random quote, we want to display that quote. This function called render quote is the one that will display the quote. It will display the quote and the author. So that is the work of that function. Then this other function here is for tweeting the quote. You want to post the quote in Twitter, and this is the URL that we'll use for Twitter. Then the other function is to post the function to Facebook, and this is the actual thing that we'll do. Then we listen for events. Listen for the click event. Before you call this function, you have to listen for this events. So I believe this event should be at the top before you call any function. You should listen for this event. So I'll just place it here. There. Yeah. So I'll just save so that I can reorder. I think this is the correct way that we'll do the tasks. So without much ado, let's start writing our JavaScript code. So before you start writing code, let us first check about how the data is. So I'll just copy this URL, and I'll open it in a browser so that you can see how the data actually is. So if you go to this type.fit/API/quotes, if you go to that URL, you'll get these quotes. There are just a few quotes there. You can always use other APIs to get quotes, but I'll teach using this one. So these quotes, you can see it is an array of objects. So each object contains text, that is the actual quote, and the author. So you can see this is just simple data. It's just an array that contains two keys. One is text that contains the actual quote, and then the other one is author that contains the actual author. And all of them are just that way. So this is the data that we'll use. So you can go to our JavaScript and fetch this data using the fetch API. Back to our code. I'll just open this JavaScript there. Let me close this. This is preview. Now I'll need this one. So let me close this one. Then I'll split my screen into two so that I can move this side. Yeah, that way. Then I'll open my HTML there. Yeah, and I just need only those two files. I put my HTML here and my JavaScript here. So as you have said, let me close this one and just this. So the first step is to fetch our data, and I've said that we'll use this fetch function that is inbuilt for JavaScript. So I'll create a function. I'll call it fetch data, and I'll create an arrow function. So I'll say const fetch data, like that, is equals to an arrow function. Arrow function like that. Yeah. Since now I've created my function, inside this function I'll fetch the actual data. So I'll just say fetch. Now I'll paste the API there, the endpoint or the URL. This is there. Then I need to store this in a variable. But you know that I think you're taught how to use since this data cannot come immediately, it might delay. So you have to use like an asynchronous way so that you can wait for the data first to come is when you save it. So you can make this function async. So you can say async. You make it asynchronous so that you can await for this fetch. Await. Then we'll store this in a variable. I'll call that variable response. I'll say const response. Or I can just extend like that. Okay. So I'll save this in a response, and since this response is a promise, you wait for it to be resolved. So I'll just convert it to JSON first. I believe you have already been taught this. So I'll say JSON response.json. Then I also have to await this one. I'll say await. Then I'll store this in a variable called data, because this is the actual data. So yeah, so I have fetched the data from this API, and it returns a response. So I have to do .json, so that, and then I store it in this data. So I can log this data to confirm that I have it. So I'll just log the data. I'll say log data like that. So let us go to the browser and see if you have got the actual data, because the first thing that you have to make sure is that you have to have the data first. Before doing anything, you have to have the data. So let us check if you have the data. And for this function to run, you have to actually call it first. You have to call it so that it can run. Because if you write a function and you don't call it, it won't run. So you have to run this function first so that it can be run. Then you can check the browser for the data. Now if you go to the browser, you can go to developer options and check the console. So let me expand this one. Check the console. Then you can see the console has an array. So the data is actually an array of objects. You can see this is the actual data that we saw in the API. So we have fetched the data correctly. So you can store it in a variable. So instead of logging it, let us store it in a variable first. So let's go back to our code and store this data in a variable. So instead of logging the data, you can create a variable where you can store the data. So I'll create a variable here. I'll say let quotes is equals to an empty array. Then instead of logging this data, I can assign the quotes variable to that data, like that. So now our data is stored in this quotes array. I think that is good. So then the next thing that we can do according to algorithm here, you can see now we have already defined this function and already got the data and we have stored it to that. The next thing is we want to get an individual quote, and that quote has to be random. So maybe I can show you how to get there. There are many ways of getting a random number. Maybe I can create just a new file here, test.javascript. Put it here. So there are many ways of getting a number. You can use, like in the previous video, you used the date object to get a random number. But there's this method here is called math.random. It's the random method for math object. So if you log this method generates a random number between 0 and 1. You can just confirm. So if I console.log here, then I run this code. You can see here in my terminal, wait for it to run. You can see it has generated this random number, but it's below 1. It's between 0 and 1. And every time I run this code, it generates a random number. So if I want this number to be a whole number, maybe I want to generate a random number between 0 and 10. I can take that random number and multiply it by 10. So if I save this code and now run it again, you can still be generating a random number between 1 and 10. So you can see this is 9 point. If I run it again, it will be 9.5. You can see it will be 5 point something, just random numbers. And if you want this to be just a whole number, there are a lot of methods, but the one that I prefer is this one for math.flow. So I'll just take all of this code, then I put it inside math.flow, like that. So if now I run this code, you can see it will generate a random number, but it's a whole number because it's just 1. If I run it again, it will be 6. Just random numbers between 1 and 10. If I need between 1 and 100, I multiply this one by 100. If I between 1 and 20, I multiply it by 20. So depending on the range that you want, you can just multiply with that number. So if I say 1 and 20, it will be 6. 6 is between 1 and 20. You can get 10. Can get 17 between 1 and 20. So that is how this is actually the method that I want us to use to generate these random numbers. And if you want to know more about the math object, I can refer you to this site. Let me go out to the browser and show you the site. If you want to learn more about the math object or anything, you can always go to the documentation. So this is the developer Mozilla documentation. So if you go here and search for math, you'll be directed to this site. And here it describes to you about most of the math functions that you can use. They're here. So the one that you have used, that math.flow is here. If you click it, you can see what it does. It rounds down and returns the largest integer less than or equals to the given number. So this one rounds down. So this one is math.flow. Then there is math.random that you have used here. It's here. So you can say this math.random returns a floating point random number that is greater than or equal to 0 but less than 1. So if you want to see about more of those functions, you can just come here and check. Maybe you can check the difference between this math.trunc and math.flow. So this math.trunc returns the integer part of a number, so it removes the decimal part. If that is what you want, you can use this math.trunc. But there's this math.round. So this one returns the value of the number rounded to the nearest integer. So this one rounds off the nearest integer. So math.flow rounds down. This one rounds off. Then there is math.cl. I think math.cl rounds up. So you can compare those methods and you can see which one is the one that, this one math.cl, and check that. You can see this one rounds up. So math.cl rounds up, math.flow rounds down. Then math.round rounds off. So you can check out the difference and the different example and the different places where you can use those things. This is the best resource that I found, so you can read this and get more content. So let's go back to our app and continue building it. Since now you know how to generate a random number, we'll generate one in our app. So inside our app, we'll create another function there. It is an arrow function. So I'll say const. I'll call it get random quote because the work of this function is to get a random quote. So I'll say get random quote. is equals to an arrow function like that. Then the first thing that I'll do and to generate the random number. So you have said that I can just let's just write it again. You said to generate a random number, you use this math dot random, and this math dot random generate a random number between 0 and 1. So just decimal numbers. Then we want it to be equal to the length of that array. So I'll say this one times length of the array is, we're not sure, so I'll say quotes dot length. Just the same thing that we did here. We said if it is 10 times 10, if it's 10 times 20, now here we want to times the length of the array. So if the array has 10 things, it will times 10. If it has 20 times 20, like that. So I think this one is clear. Then we want all these things, since this one will be a floating point number, you want to give it to math.flow so that it can be rounded up. Rounded statement.flow rounds down. I've forgotten. You can just check in the docs. Now this one you can save it to a variable. This number you can save it to a variable. I'll call that variable index. So I'll say const index is equals to that. So now you have generated a random number, then you have saved it to a variable called index. So this value of index is just any number. Every time this method is called, the value of index will be a different number. That is the whole idea of getting the random quote. Then after that, we can create a variable here to keep track of the current quote. So I'll say let current quote. You have seen that the data that every quote is an object. So each quote is an object because the data is an array of objects. So each quote is an object. So I'll say current quote is an empty object. Then here I'll say now current quote will be the quote of index random, of any random index. So I'll say of index like that, because I've said this index will be a random number. So if the index is 0, it will be the first quote. If the index is 1, it will be the second quote, something like that. This is the whole idea. So now we'll be generating a random quote from here, and for this method to work, we have to call it. So I'll call it here immediately after I fetch the data. I'll call this get random quote. I'll call that method here. So yeah, now we have our data and you have this random. You have this function that gets a random quote. So according to our algorithm, you have done this step 3. You have retrieved the variable and you have, now the next thing is to do this function for render quotes. This is the next step. And to create this render quote function. So the work of this render quote is to display the quotes in the UI. So let's get that function. Say const render quote is equals to an arrow function like that. Then if you see in our HTML, this is the place where we want to display our quote here. Here's where we want to display our quote. So I'll get this div. I'll get that div and I'll save it as a variable. So I'll just copy that ID, then go to my JavaScript there, and on the top there I'll just say const, I paste that div, then I change it to camel case like that, is equals to document get element by ID, and I paste the actual ID. So here is where I want to display our quote. Then also I want to display our author. I want to display the quote and the author. So the author will display the author here. So I'll get this ID also. I've copied that. Then I can duplicate this. Then I can change the name to get author. Then the ID to get author. To quote dash author. I have that. So now I have the div for displaying the quote and the div for displaying the author. So now the work of this render function is just to display the quote and the author. So here in render function I can say now quote text. I've called it quote text like that. I can either use in HTML or text content. So let me use text content today. Is equals to current quote. So the current quote will be this random quote that I have. Then you have seen that these quotes have the key text and author. So the quote is in the key text. So say current quote dot text, like that. Then I'll display the author. I'll say quote author dot text content is equals to current quote dot author, like that. Not quote author dot author. Because you have looked at the data and have seen the data is an object that contains two keys, that the first key is text, the other key is author. So this one for text, I'll place it in this quote text. This one for author, I'll place in that quote author. And for this function to work, you have to call it. So I'll call it immediately after I've gotten the random quote. I'll call that since I have the random quote, I want to display it. So I'll call this render quote method function here. I'll call it there. So before we go to the browser, let me just give you a brief of what you have done. First, there's this function that fetches the quotes from the API, then stores the quotes in a quotes array. So all the quotes are now in this array from this function, and that function I've called it here. So that is the only function that you're calling it. As the app starts, we call this function. So this is the actual function. Then after storing the quote there, it will call this get random quote function. So this code will run, and the work of this code is to generate a random number, then get a quote that has that index of the random number, then store that quote in this current quote object. Then after doing that, we call this render quote, and the function of this render quote is now render the quote that has been stored in the current quote object. So you see here, you stored the quote in the current quote object, and now the quote is there. So I'll just display the quote here, like that. So you can go to the browser and confirm that it's working. Let me save this code and go to the browser. So if you go to the browser, you can see now the quote is being displayed there, and the author is being displayed here. So that is what we wanted to do. But you can just add some quotes before and after this quote, and maybe you can add a tilde before this author. Let us do that. I just want to improve the UI, and also I can trim this part. I just want the author, not the name of the API. I just want to display the text author, so I can just trim this part. You can see how you can do that. Let's go to the browser and see how you can do that. Let's go back to the code editor, not the browser. So the first thing that you want to do is to add the quotes around the quote. So there are two ways. I'll just show you all of them. So I can use the concatenation, string concatenation. So I can add a quote like that here, then add another quote like that there. So I can use this method of adding a quote before and after the actual quote. Then here I can also add the before the author, I can add the tilde. The tilde is just, maybe I can show you. This is what we call the tilde, this sign, that one. Then maybe a space. Yeah, that way. So I think that is good. So you can use this string concatenation, or you can use the new ES6 syntax. This one for backticks. I can just add backticks here. I can just add a backtick there and a backtick there. Then since this is a variable, I'll just surround it in this. Then I do that. Then I put quotes here before and quotes after, like that. So I think this one is better. It's just, and also if you have to update with the new syntax, so this is the new syntax, so I'll maintain that new syntax. So I've put the quotes there. Also here you can use, but yeah, also here you can use the same approach. So let me just delete this and use the backticks approach. So I'll put backticks there. Then I surround this one with the curly braces. Then I put this $sign here, like that. Then I add the tilde there and a space. Then I save my code. So I've added the quotes and this tilde around there. So you can go to the browser and confirm that these quotes are displayed and this tilde is there. If you go to the browser, you can see now our quotes has that quotes before and after, which is good. And this author also has this tilde and a space, which is good. Now we can work on removing this part. So let's go to the browser and remove this extra part here. Let's go to our code editor and remove that. So if you go to our code editor, maybe I can show you about how to use the split and the join. So let's go back to our test here. Let us comment this one since you don't need it anymore. Then you can save. So how the split works, split converts a string into an array according to a specific separator. Let's look at an example. So I'll say const, maybe I say author name. If the author name is something like first name, last name, this is the author name, and I want to separate it. I can use we're seeing how the split works. So split, let me just log it directly. So I'll log it. Let's say something like author or let me write it here so that you can see it clearly. Author dot split. So if I say something like author dot split, it will turn this string into an array. So you can see that fact. Let me just cut this and put it inside here, then remove this column. So if I run this code, you can see now our name, this author's name, will be an array of characters. But since we didn't put anything inside this split, we didn't put any separator here, each individual character will be an array item. So if I wanted the separator to separate this as the first item and this as the second item, I'll use a space here. I'll put here a space like that. So now the separator will be space. So if I run this code, it will be an array of 2 items. You can see now it's an array of 2 items, where this first item and this is the second item. So it looked where there is a space and did that. So if there was a comma here, let's say there was a comma, and I wanted this 2 to be, I wanted the array to break here, I'll put the separator as a comma like that. I'll put here comma. So I put there comma and I run, I'll still have the same results, because it will check for the comma, and that is where the array will separate. So that is how the split work. The join is it's actually the opposite. You can confirm in our videos we have talked about the join. So I wanted to tell you about the split because this is the one that we'll use. You have seen currently the author's name is something like, the author's name is author name. This is how the author name is. It is author name, then there is a comma, then the writing something like type dot fit. So we don't want this type dot fit, we only want the author's name. So what you can do, we can separate this into an array. I think I missed the spelling of author name, but it does not matter. Don't know the spelling. Author, there's an O here. Author name. So in the API, they're displaying the author name as author name, then comma, then type dot fit. So we want to separate this. We don't want this last part for type dot. We don't want this part. So what I can do, I can split the array into 2. So if I split the array into 2, it will be something like this. It will be author name as the first array item, then type dot fit as the second array item. So if I want to get the author's name, I can say and the index 0. So index 0 is the first index, so I'll say index 0. Like that. So if I save this code and run it again, you can see I only get the author name. And this is the thing that we'll do to get only the author's name. We'll split the string that we get, then we'll get only the first thing. I think that one is clear. So let's go back to our code and do that. So here in our code, here, instead of just displaying the author name directly, maybe I can just create a variable first. I'll say let author is equals to this one. So this is the actual author, and this one, as you have seen, it will give you the author name, a comma, and this type dot fit. So we want to split it where there is that comma. So I'll say dot split, and my criteria is that where there is a comma to split into 2 different arrays. So when I split it, there'll be something like this. The one that I've seen, it will be, maybe I can run this code again. Let me delete this one and run this code. It will be like this. It will be an array of the first, the actual name, and this type dot fit. So that is how this code will be. Where is it? That's how this will be. So our value of author will be an array, but we don't want the value of author to be an array. We want it to be a string. So we'll get this author's name, and you have seen how we get it. We just say index, not there, here. We say we want that author index 0, like that. And if I save and run this code, you can say I get the actual author's name. So I can do that here. So if I say I want this author but index, I'll put this square brackets, then I say index 0. So that will be my author. Then I want to display the author, like that. So I think that is clear. So you can go to the browser and check that the type.fit is not there. You can go and check that. Now if you go to the browser and if you look at this code, it's just fine, and the author is just there. It does not have that type.fit. Maybe I can show you how the author was. You can see how the author was. It was the author name, then a comma, then type.fit. But now we have removed this comma and type.fit, and we've only displayed the author name alone. And that, I think, according to me, that's good user. That is a good user experience. So now let us make this new code to work, because now if I want to generate a new code, I have to refresh the browser. But now instead of refreshing the browser, and when someone clicks this button, a new code generates. So you can do that. To do that, first you have to get the actual button from the HTML. So I'll go to the HTML and look at this button. It has this ID called new code. So I'll just copy that ID, new code. Then I'll go to my HTML there and I'll duplicate this one. Then I'll replace the ID to new code, like that. Then here I'll call it new code. Since it's a button, I'll call it new code button, like that. So you can see up here I'm defining my variables. I'll just comment, I'll say up here is variables, then here is functions, so I'll just say functions, then down there it's event listeners. So here below the functions, down there there'll be event listeners, like that. So now since I have my variable here for the new button, I can add an event listener to it. So it's just simple. I'll just say new quote button dot add event listener. Then I'll listen for the click event. Then when someone clicks this button and to call this function here, where is it? This generate random quote, because when someone clicks that new function first and to generate a new quote first is gonna be and to display. So I'll call this generate new quote function. So I'll call generate random quote, like that. So yeah, so when someone clicks this new button, it will call this generate random quote function, which will get a random number. Then we'll store that, we'll get the quote of that random number and store it to this current quote. Then we'll display the quote using the render quote function. So let's go to the browser and confirm that our new quote button is now working. So you've got the browser and now you click this new quote button. You can see every time I click this button, it displays a new quote. Every time I click this, it displays a new quote, like that. So yeah, you can see our new quote button is working. So you can now make this tweet and this Facebook buttons to work. So let's just go and do that. First we'll start with the tweet button. So I'll get that button from the HTML. So that button is here. It's called tweet quote. It has an ID of tweet quote, so I'll just copy that ID. Then here in my variables, I'll just duplicate this one. Then I'll change the ID to tweet quote. Then I'll call that button tweet button. Tweet button. So when someone clicks this tweet button, I'll add an event listener there. So I'll say tweet button, add event listener. Now listen for the click event. When someone clicks that button, I want it to call this method called tweet quote. We don't have it yet, so I'll create that function. So below the render quote, I'll create that tweet quote function here. It will be an arrow function. So I'll say const tweet quote is equals to an arrow function, like that. So what we'll do in this tweet quote, we'll first get the URL of where we want to post, and I researched and I got the URL here. It's in the algorithm. I'll just post this URL in the video description. So this is the actual URL that I got. That when someone goes to this URL, they'll get to that point of posting. So I'll say Twitter URL is equals to this one. I just paste it there. So this is the actual URL. You can just, if you go to this until here. You can see it will take you to where the Twitter is posting. Maybe you can confirm that. Let me copy this code, then I go and show you in the browser. So if you go to the browser, then you paste that URL that you copied, that for twitter.com/intent. You'll see it will take you to, no, not /intent, should be /intent/tweet. I think I didn't copy it full. /intent/tweet, that one. She'll take you to here. Yeah, she'll take you to here where you can post. Let me just, yeah, it will take you to this part where you can post. So that is the actual URL that I aren't asked to use. I think you have seen it. It will take you to where someone can type something to post, to tweet on Twitter. So let's go back to our code and continue editing it. So you have seen, and if you go to the URL until here, you get to where you are tweeting you want to post something on Twitter. If you go to this URL, then what thing do you want to post? I want to post a Twitter where the text is equals to this thing here. So I'll use this encode URI component, and when you hover on it, you can see it will tell you that this function encodes the text string as a valid component of a URI. URI is uniform source identifier. Uniform resource identifier is the URI. So that is the function, is the work of this method here. So I want to post the current quote.text. I've added these quotes here, but I've used this concatenation method. Maybe you can use our own. Method. Maybe I can just copy. You can just maintain it like that, because here we use the backticks method. Here you can use this concatenation method, which is just fine. So this part is just this part here, and then you want to display the quote and the author. But if the author is not there, if a quote does not have an author, you want the author to be anonymous. So that is what you have done. Yeah. Then the next thing that you'll do, when someone clicks this tweet button, it will call this method. This method will get that URL. So since you have our URL, we can open a new window with that URL. So let's say window.open, and I want to open a new tab with this URL. So I'll say Twitter URL. Then I want to open it in a new tab. So I'll say blank. So this is the things that you learned in HTML: target, blank, target, self. So I want it to open in a blank, in a new tab. So I'll say target blank, like that. So you can go to the browser and confirm that this one is working. So if I go to the browser and I click this tweet button, it will open a new tab in Twitter, and I'll tweet the exact text that I was with it there. I think you have seen that it tweets the text and the author. But we didn't crop this part. You can crop this part if you want, or so when someone is editing, they can delete this part, because it does not post. It just writes for you so that you can click post for it to post. But if you look at this URL, maybe I can zoom it. Maybe some people will ask where I've got that URL. If you zoom this, it's not zooming. I don't know why. Let me just to 100. If you look at this URL here, you can see twitter.com/intent/post. Text is equal our actual quote, then the author will be this one, like that. And that is how this one is writing here. We are writing it to the URL there. I think that one is clear. So you can work with the Facebook one. So Facebook is just the same idea. So I'll just go quickly. So if you want to post, if someone clicks the Facebook button to take them to Facebook where they can post the quote, so I'll just do the same thing that I did for Twitter. So I'll just go and copy this ID for Facebook. It's called Facebook quote. I'll just copy it. Then in my JavaScript, I can duplicate this one like that. Then I can change the ID. Here, Facebook quote. Then I can call this button Facebook button, like that. Then in my event listeners there, I can add the click event on that button. I can say Facebook.add event listener. I'll listen for the click event. So when someone clicks that button, I want to call this function, I'll call it Facebook quote. Facebook quote, like that. Facebook quote, yeah. Then I'll create that function since it's not there. So I'll say const Facebook quote is equals to an arrow function, like that. Then the same idea that we did to Twitter, I'll just do the same thing. I'll say const Facebook URL is equals to, then I'll copy this URL here in my readme. I have it. Where is it? It's here. Just copy it. That. Then I'll just say window open Facebook URL. Then just like Twitter, and it open a new page, I'll say blank. So yeah, this is the part for Facebook. So you can go and test it if it works. So if you go to our app and click this icon, Facebook, you'll see it will open a new page of Facebook. But I have to log in. So if you're logged in, actually it will go to your account, and maybe you can see how that works. So if you're logged into Facebook, you can confirm there if it works, and you can just tell me in the comment section. So that is it for this app, guys. See you in the next app. Not in the next app. This is the final app. So maybe we'll be creating more apps. You can just follow our channel to keep track of the latest apps. But this is the last one for this course. So I'll see you in the next course, guys. Thank you for being with us all that time. So peace out.